Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Infrastructure, Transportation and Safety Subcommittee. We're going to start with the land acknowledgement, followed by a moment of silent reflection and the respectful conduct statement. We acknowledge that Stratford is situated on lands shared between many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples today. As a city, we have a responsibility for the stewardship of the land on which we live and work. Today, we acknowledge the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and the neutral Arawandran peoples, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to live, work, and play on this land. Next, I'd like to share the Respect in Stratford statement. The corporation of the city of Stratford is committed to providing quality service to all members of the public, council, and our employees. Our goal is to promote a safe, healthy, respectful, inclusive, and positive environment. We have a responsibility to treat people with respect by creating safe and respectful spaces. It is the city's expectation that all present will be respectful. Item 2 are disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Seeing none. Item 3 is delegations, and we have none scheduled today. Item 4 is the report of the supervisor of waste operations. 4.1 is the Stratford landfill public input invite November 2025. And we do have a report there, and I do see our report, a waste operations supervisor. Would you like to speak to the public input?
I'm not going to be commenting on that account today.
Yeah. Okay, basically there was a comment about the length of line, the lineups for hazardous waste, and as we all know, but just to let the public know, the reason that we are limited to having Saturday drop-offs for hazardous waste at the landfill is because that's the only thing we're permitted to do at the moment by the province. So staff has requested that we would be able to have more or an expansion of the times and days that we can accept hazardous waste. So we're just hoping everybody can be patient while we wait on the ministry to get back to us about that. Are there any other comments?
Yeah, sorry, Jody, and just because there's no comments on that, just so everyone's aware, we did submit an application to the ministry and stuff that come back that.
Right. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, there is a staff recommendation that we received the report. Councillor Hunter will move. Any other comments? If not, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Item 5 is the report of the council committee coordinator. 5.1 is an encroachment application for 23 Albert Street. And we do have a staff recommendation, which I will. Are there any comments or questions about the encroachment application? Pretty straightforward. So we do have a recommendation to approve that encroachment application. Mover, Councillor McCabe, any other thoughts? If not, all in favor? And that carries. Item 6 is the department update, and we'll turn it over to our director to give us a quick update.
Do I need to bring the microphone closer, or is it just for?
No microphone.
Perfect. Okay, I guess first of all, I'd just like to introduce Autumn Loosmore. She's our new change program manager with us today. She's just here to get a feel for what the subcommittee feels like. With an introduction. And then before I go into my update, I'll actually just pass it off to Emily. Ask her to be here largely to answer any of the recycling questions that you might have. So feel free to have her questions that she didn't answer. Is there any questions from my
Questions? So I just had a question about the non-eligible sources. So basically the downtown businesses. So I did have a couple of questions about your overlap of people that have residential and businesses in the same property. So can you kind of give us a little rundown of how that might work with eligible and non-eligible folks in the same building?
So how the regulation is set up right now. If you have a residential unit above a business, you are eligible, but if you are a business below, you are not. We are working with the new Blue Box program and that contractor. Because we've extended the non-eligible Blue Box collection into January to October 31st. We'll be doing a slower rollout in those areas, so they are delivering carts or intend to deliver carts to the downtown core. But we'll be working with them kind of closely into that transition. But we won't be able to put business waste in carts that are designated for residential units.
Okay, and just to be clear, we are still collecting the commercial waste up until the end of October.
Yeah, and
Original receptacles.
yes, and I did want to provide an update. I don't know if this is a good time for that, but back in September, September 22nd, the regular council, we had a management report that went to council regarding the curbside waste collection contract from 2026 until 2033. And that was to get direction on awarding the proposals for that RFP. So that RFP included mandatory pricing for collecting garbage, green bin, leaf and yard waste. We did get direction from council at that time to award to Canadian Waste Management for manual collection. There wasn't a non-mandatory option that we put in that RFP for proponents to price the collection of the non-eligible, so the businesses, churches, municipal buildings that aren't going to be included in this new program. But as was outlined in that management report, those results were not included for decision at that time because we had heard from the province after we released that proposal that businesses may get included back into the Blue Box program. That was released by the provincial government in June of 2025. After this regular council meeting, the end of September 30th, we heard from the province that did not get adopted. They were not going to include businesses. So the update is that update that the businesses are still not included in the new program, and that we are gonna be coming to council in the coming months for direction on what to do with business waste, churches, municipal buildings, those that aren't included after October 31st. There are a number of things that we'll need to consider, such as, do we include all businesses, not just the downtown core, but do we also include other businesses like on the outside of the downtown core, how long we want to do a contract for, et cetera. So that will be coming from us.
Thank you, Councilor Hay.
A question regarding recycling and residential and businesses. I happen to have a business which has residential above us. And they've had several questions for me about what they're going to do because they have no place to put their big wood bins. And I said, well, just use my wood bin. But is that, are you indicating that there's some difference between the two, or this is all fine until October 31st?
So for the new program, if they were given the new recycling carts, you wouldn't be able to put your business space in there. Because that's not eligible for this new program. Given that we are continuing that service for the city for that period, that's something that we could work as like it won't be the only establishment that we have in that downtown core. They should get their own cart. But those are things that we'll probably have to put on as like a base.
Yeah, I just, these things have come up, and I just didn't want to communicate to people who have that residential and commercial thing, something that is not true. So.
Yeah, so they could continue to use their box, like if they put out a small recycling box, they can continue to use that.
Okay.
Yeah, as we're transitioning that all over, we're not the only municipality that really have challenges with the downtown core mixed business.
Thank you. Any other comments? Turn it back to.
Doesn't work.
Jack.
No, thanks Emily for answering those questions. And I definitely, I'm glad to see that the VIA was, the residential, units in the VIA were included as part of the collection system. That was at one point not going to be included. Been back and forth a lot on that one, so I'm sure there'll be a lot more things to work out in the next 9 months. But please, if you do hear those comments, do reach out to myself or Emily, because we know that they can help rectify the situation. We don't know, it's hard to provide a response from that. I'll provide a brief update today. Looking at our 2 larger reconstruction projects, the Avon and Avondale project was paid today. So that's nice. We're just in time to Stonewall tomorrow. Unfortunately, Albert Street was not ready today, so we're gonna have to be trying to get that done before winter fully sets. So our end, just, you know, we do have all the controls in place, so when we do pay, it has to meet a certain criteria or considerations. So if they don't meet that criteria, it might end up being come spring, we're gonna ask them to tear it up and do it again. But that's just unfortunately part of the process when we start doing work in the winter time. So we'll have more details regarding that when it comes forward. Couple of project updates, lower and down on the intersection. We are currently finalizing the design for that. We do have a consultant hired for that work. However, we don't plan to tender that work until the new year, so that's something that's going to push back to 2026. What was that the last? Other than that, we're pretty much ready for winter. All our fleet is operational. We're on shift work, so that's good. And then the one thing I'll just mention, as you would have seen the email just recently, that our contractor for the Alone Trunk Sewer project has encountered some issues with their equipment. The timing is kind of poor timing on their end, in the sense that they did ask for an extension for the noise bylaw, which our council has declined. Basically what's happened is the tunneling machine that they're using has encountered some boulders, and what's happened is that it's degraded or deteriorated the mechanism that helps slide it through the tunnel. And so their big concern is if that part is no longer functioning, it's going to be very difficult to push the new sections of pipe into the tunnel. If they stop work, they're afraid it's going to seize, potentially freeze, and inhibit further tunneling work. So they essentially, in terms of the contractors, considering it an emergency from their end. From discussion with the council, obviously it's not a desired outcome from our end. We are following up on mechanisms for penalties through the contract, and we're also looking through our bylaw to make it cost prohibitive to the extent that we can, recognizing that the council did say we don't want overnight tunneling work. It does generate a fair amount of complaints from the public. So the big concern from our end, if we were to stop the tunneling work to proceed, and if we were to cease entirely, then it becomes a bit of a finger pointing, higher liability risk to the city to remedy the situation. So essentially, the tunneling work could stop entirely. That might essentially need to be rescued, requiring a new shaft to be created to rescue the machine that's in there. That's quite costly. So both parties essentially want to avoid potentially really a much more significant cost if operations cease. Ideally, based on how operations are currently working, we're hoping to have this rectified in the next 24 to 72 hours, in which case it'll just be done. If the tunneling operations cease entirely, then we have a whole other consideration that we're going to go to council. It'll probably be several weeks, if not a couple months before the issue can be addressed. So it's a fairly significant situation if we were to cease operations. So not the desired answer I want to bring to council. I know it's going to increase frustrations to the residents for doing communication strategies that we can, those that are impacted. And hopefully this is resolved.
Questions, Councillor Hunter?
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. What does the language of the contract speak to about situations like this? Do you know off the top of your head?
We have, noise restrictions, so they would have gone to the contract knowing that we do not permit work between 7 PM and 7 AM, so overnight, they would have known that. And they know they're going into winter type conditions, which is also has its own circumstances. The difficulty or concern from us arises that you're doing tunneling work underground, which you do not exactly determine the frequency or the amount of boulders, which is the most restrictive object you can encounter while tunneling, and we provide what is an evaluation of what we think they'll encounter, and if it happens to be outside that parameters of what our initial investigation showed, it opens us to likely saying, well, you indicated it was gonna be this, but it might be much worse, and that's where the things can become more complicated with legal matters, typically, so.
And I assume that these boulders were outside that scope then, is that correct? Or
That. My understanding, the chair, my understanding is. They're anticipating encountering more boulders on the north section of the pipe. This is the south section where they weren't anticipating. Now we don't have a measurement of what that would actually look like. In terms of there were some parameters or not, like I said, it's one of those things to be, if the operation happens to cease entirely, it's gonna be very costly, and that's what we're essentially trying to avoid here, because that's when things become a little more complicated and more legal. Forward, there isn't a great language in that, which doesn't how to deal with things that are outside the scope, so machinery breaking or unanticipated soils is outside the scope, regardless whether it is or not, their position would be that it would be, because that's how these things work, so. Would that answer your question?
Any other questions? I have one. Oh, go ahead.
I did have just one more. So is it the understanding that if they were allowed to continue drilling through the night, this would be completed in 48 to 72 hours? Is that what they're suggesting?
Through the chair, as long as we don't encounter any other unanticipated obstacles, their current pace is on track to be the next 24 to 72 hours. So it's if there's no more boulders they encounter, then it should be fairly seamless. That being said, if they encounter the conditions, they can be longer. So
Thank you.
So my question is definitely, I'm not an engineer asking this question, but it just occurs to me that, so they are talking about their equipment having to keep running. Is it because of like the putting pressure on, like, I don't quite understand why it would be a difficulty, and if it is a difficulty, could they run it on, say, low speed? That would create a lot less. You know what I mean, like, could they have like a holding speed at which they would not lose ground, but their machine also would not turn on? But it wouldn't be like, yeah, we're pounding through a boulder here in the middle of that.
yeah, it's a great question. I don't have an exact answer to that. My understanding where the issue has happened is there's essentially the main cutting face that the pipe hole behind, and there's just a surrounding it on the outer diameter. There's a cutting tool that adds like a bed knife, make sure to help slip it into place and make it a lot easier. So the machine operates quite slow. I think they're 5 to 10 meters a day currently, so I'm not sure how much slower you get between inches an hour in that scenario. Good question to ask, but without the lubrication in place, the concern is that any kind of slowing down could kind of stop. So the one thing we are following up on is we were strongly resistant from stopping the work proceeding due to potential legal circumstances that come out of it. However, when the engineers pulled, we plan on doing our own investigation or analysis of what actually has happened here. Determine if there was some attributability to the thing or not. And that just information we can use in terms of next steps from our end.
Okay. Thanks for that update. So that would include item 6. So item 7 is the advisory committee outside board minutes. We have transportation, accessibility, and energy and environment committee notes. Item 8 is the next subcommittee meeting, which will be December will be canceled because we are going to, yeah, this was great. And information about the 2026 subcommittee meetings available at a later date. Item 9 is adjournment. Councilor Beatty, all in favor? That carries. Thank you.